Throughout this entire school year, we have focused on what it means to be an American. As I have grown up, I have felt responsibilities fall onto my shoulders. In middle school, everything was relatively worry-free for me. Grades didn't matter too much, and there was never anything to stress about. As I transitioned into high school, the real world started to become more clear. I realized that grades would determine where I went to college, and people were constantly reminding me of that. I started to stress about a lot more things that I didn't used to, such as finals, that sometimes determined my overall grade. This was the first year I had the opportunity to express my opinion in a way that I actually felt mattered. Students began to walk out. People noticed what we were doing instead of just saying we were kids and didn't know what we were talking about. Throughout all of this stress, you are getting closer and closer to being 18, a legal adult. By the time I am a senior in high school, I will have the privilege of voting. I'll have to educate myself on all of the current political issues, even more so than now. Not only that, but all of my decisions are now considered my own, for better or for worse. I also feel that I have to hold up to myself for my brother and sister's standards. They both look up to me a lot, and if I don't set a good example, they could both head down the wrong path. Looking into the future, I hope that college will be there. Right now that sounds really exciting, when in reality I have to truly take care of myself for the first time. After realizing the responsibilities I had, I set out to find how other people felt about growing up in America and the responsibilities they felt they had.
High school wasn't too stressful of an experience for me. My high school in Indiana did a really good job of preparing us for college, giving us a lot of AP courses and stuff like that to really get us to learn how to study on our own. So I really didn't feel too stressed. I always had school come really naturally to me, but in college it was a little more. First year I was a lot more, okay, I do need to learn how to study. That was one thing that kind of hurt me because in high school I wasn't stressed about studying, so I didn't. I was pretty much okay if I listened to the teacher and just went into the test, but in college I really had to go in and study a lot more each night, not just before the test, in order to succeed.
Yes, my experience in high school has been pretty stressful due to the fact that my teachers always want to see the best for me, and my parents want to see me succeed with everything that I do, so they put a lot of pressure on me to do my absolute best, which is really hard sometimes because I'm in advanced classes and in AP classes, so the overall pressure to do well is kind of like set pretty high.
No. I mean, I think high school was a lot of fun for me. I think there was a certain level of stress to just meet standards, my parents' standards, my standards, try to do well. So, I mean, that goes along with pretty much everything that, a person should do, is try to meet those standards. So there's certain levels of stress for everything you do in life. I don't think I had any additional stress in high school.
Throughout high school, we learn many new things about life and more specifically ourselves. It is so hard to remind ourselves that these things won't matter in the years to come, but in the moment it feels like the end of the world. It is also important to remember that this is the time in our lives to have fun and make mistakes, because the stress we feel right now is only going to carry into the real world with us later in life. Stress is not just something that goes away. An example of this being Chris, the main character from the novel Into the Wild. Chris felt so much pressure from his parents to carry the family name and be successful that it just became too much for him and he reached a breaking point. This resulting in him running away from home and creating his own journey, alone in the wilderness, in hopes of finding true self-happiness.
When learning and educating myself about current issues, it's a lot easier when I have friends and people I know that are involved with them or are very educated in the topic. For example, with the social activism club that got started at Jackson, a lot of my friends and people that I know started and are a part of that club, so it's a lot easier to educate myself about those topics.
I think the people around you, family and friends, are highly influential as far as a person's level of activity in current issues. I mean, if you have friends and family who are involved in it and active, I think it just makes it easier for a person to be more aware of the things that are going on around them and around the world. So I think it's highly influential.
Your peer group determines a lot in your life. If you're hanging around the wrong people, then you most likely act like they do. If you can choose the right people to be around, your quality of life will increase substantially. Your friends and peers can also help you learn a lot. If your friends are smart, they can help you in classes and any other problems you may have. If you surround yourself with good people, your chances of success and being happy are a lot higher.
My responsibilities changed from high school and college just because living alone or living, outside of your parents' house is totally different than I expected. All of a sudden you're responsible for food and payment, and there's not anyone there telling you like, hey, you have to do this. It's you on your own saying, okay, I really need to like buckle down and do it. And there's a lot more freedom, but there's a lot more responsibility with it. I love it, but it's a lot more like a grown-up role, I guess. You kind of are responsible for your own mistakes. College is nice because it has its own little safety net built in, so you can't make too big of a mistake, but of course it's much less of a safety net than high school has because you're not under your own parents' roof. I know people that commute and they still had the same huge change in freedom, and they still had a bunch more freedom after they started college as well.
Well, that's a little different for me because I ended up having a child when I was 20 years old. So my responsibilities changed greatly because I had to care for a human being. So even though I probably wasn't ready, I had to be ready to care for another human life. So that was probably the biggest change in responsibility for me going into college.
That if anything was going to move forward in my life, that I was going to have to be responsible for making that happen. And I know that to be true now and can articulate it as you are responsible for your life. And if you're sitting around waiting on somebody to save you, to fix you, to even help you, you are wasting your time because only you have the power to take responsibility to move your life forward. And the sooner you get that, the sooner your life gets into gear.
After finding out what other people thought about growing up in America, I found out that most people still have stress-filled lives. That's just life. But we need to enjoy our time while we are still young because when we get older, we start to gain more and more responsibilities. High school and college is our time to find ourselves and figure out who we truly are. College is where we start to get a taste of the real world, living on our own and providing for ourselves. As soon as this time is over, a family will most likely be in the picture and everything changes. Your responsibilities change from being mostly self-centered on success to making sure your family will always be safe and provided for. In the end, our greatest responsibility is ourselves. We live in an amazing country with opportunities around every corner, and we need to take advantage of that.